On the morning of December 26th, I visited my good friend, Sherlock Holmes. When I arrived at his apartment, he was sitting comfortably by the fire, wearing his purple dressing gown. His sharp eyes were focused on something unusual, a dirty old hat lying on a wooden chair beside him. A magnifying glass and a pair of forceps rested nearby, making me think this hat was somehow part of his latest investigation. "You look busy," I said. "Am I disturbing you?" "Not at all," Holmes replied, gesturing toward the hat. "This case is simple, but still quite interesting. In fact, it might even be educational." I settled into an armchair, stretching my hands toward the warm fire. The cold outside was biting. And I welcomed the heat. "I assume this hat is connected to some terrible crime," I said. Holmes chuckled. "No, no crime at all. This is just one of those strange little incidents that happen when millions of people live together in a city. In a place like London, all kinds of odd events take place. Some are intriguing, even mysterious, but not necessarily criminal." "Do you know Peterson, the commissionaire?" he asked suddenly. "Yes," I replied. "This hat belongs to him?" "No," Holmes said with a small smile. "He found it. The real owner is unknown." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Look at this hat, not as a dirty old object, but as a puzzle waiting to be solved. It arrived here on Christmas morning, along with a fine, plump goose. That goose is probably roasting in Peterson's kitchen right now. How did he come by it?" I asked, now intrigued. "Let me explain," Holmes said. At around 4 o'clock on Christmas morning, Peterson was walking home from a party along Tottenham Court Road. Ahead of him, he saw a tall man carrying a white goose. Suddenly, a group of men attacked him. In the struggle, his hat fell off. Trying to defend himself, the man lifted his walking stick, but in doing so, he accidentally smashed a shop window. At that moment, Peterson rushed forward to help. But the man, seeing Peterson in his uniform, panicked. He must have thought Peterson was a policeman because he immediately fled, along with his attackers. In the end, Peterson was left standing there, alone, with only the abandoned hat and the goose. Then he returned the goose to its owner? I asked. Holmes shook his head. "No, and that's where the mystery begins. The goose had a small card tied to its leg with the name, Henry Baker, written on it. The initials, HB, are also inside the hat. But in a city like London, there are countless men named Henry Baker, so what did Peterson do? He brought both the hat and the goose to me on Christmas morning. Knowing that even the smallest mysteries interest me. I kept the goose until this morning, then I gave it to Peterson to cook for dinner." "Did the man who lost the goose put an advertisement in the newspaper?" Holmes shook his head. "No, he did not." "Then how do you plan to find him?" Holmes smiled. "Through his hat," I laughed. "You must be joking. What can you possibly learn from an old, dirty hat?" Holmes picked up his magnifying glass and handed it to me. "You know my methods, Watson. Examine the hat and see what you can deduce." I took the hat and studied it carefully. It was round, black, and well worn. Inside, the initials, HB, were sewn into the lining. There was a small hole in the brim where an elastic band should have been. But it was missing. The hat was dusty and had several stains, some of which had been covered with black ink. "I see nothing special," I admitted, handing it back. Holmes sighed. "On the contrary, Watson, you see everything, but you fail to observe." He turned the hat over in his hands, his expression full of excitement. "This man is highly intelligent. 3 years ago, he was financially stable, but now he is struggling. He used to be careful and responsible, but recently, he has become careless. This suggests some kind of trouble, perhaps drinking. And that, I believe, is why his wife has stopped loving him." I stared at him in amazement. "Holmes, that is quite a leap." "Not at all," he continued confidently. "He still has some self-respect. He stays home most of the time and rarely goes out. He is middle-aged, with gray hair that was recently cut, and he uses lime-scented hair cream. Also, I believe he does not have gas lighting in his house." "You can't be serious," I exclaimed. Holmes smiled. "Would you like me to explain how I reached these conclusions?" "Of course," I said eagerly. Holmes placed the hat on his head. It was much too large for him. A hat of this size suggests a large head, and a large brain. A man with such a brain must be intelligent, and how do you know about his financial troubles? This hat was of excellent quality when it was new. It was fashionable 3 years ago, meaning the man once had money. But he has not replaced it since, which means he has much less money now, and his carelessness. Holmes pointed to the missing elastic band. Hat-secure straps are not sold with hats. The owner must have added it himself, showing he was once careful. But since he hasn't replaced it, it means he no longer pays attention to such things. However, he still tried to hide the stains with ink, which tells me he still has some pride. And his wife, how can you say she no longer loves him? This hat hasn't been brushed in weeks. If a man's wife allows him to leave the house in such a poor state, it means she no longer cares for him. But what if he's unmarried? I asked. No, Holmes said. He was carrying the goose as a peace offering for his wife. That much is clear from the tag attached to its leg. I shook my head in amazement. Your deductions are incredible. But how did you know he doesn't have gas lighting in his house? Holmes held up the hat and pointed to several wax stains. If there were only 1 or 2, I might dismiss them as an accident. But there are at least 5. This man often uses candles instead of gas lights. I laughed. This is all very impressive, Holmes. But since no crime has been committed, doesn't it seem like a waste of time? Holmes was about to respond when the door suddenly burst open. Peterson rushed in, his face pale and his breath short. The goose, Mr. Holmes. The goose, he gasped. Holmes raised an eyebrow. What? Has it come back to life and flown away? No, sir, Peterson said, holding out his hand. Look what my wife found inside its stomach. In his palm lay a brilliant blue gemstone, glowing under the light. Holmes's eyes widened. By Jove, Peterson. This is a treasure, a diamond, sir. Peterson asked hesitantly. A diamond indeed, Holmes said. But not just any diamond. This is the diamond, the famous blue carbuncle, I gasped. The same stone that was stolen from the Countess of Morcar. Precisely, Holmes said, picking up a newspaper. And here's the article, Jewel Robbery at the Cosmopolitan Hotel. A young plumber, John Horner, has been arrested for stealing the blue carbuncle from the Countess's room. The hotel attendant, James Ryder, claims he left Horner alone for only a few minutes before the diamond disappeared. Holmes set down the paper and smiled. Watson, I think we have stumbled upon something much more serious than a simple lost hat.